Hello, everyone. My name is Beth Strausser, and I am a Senior Policy Specialist in the Policy Office at the National Science Foundation. It is my pleasure to welcome you today to one of the last sessions of the Fall 2021 NSF Virtual Grants Conference, which is the Directorate for Mathematical and Physical Sciences breakout session. Our presenter is Dr. Hans Krim, a Program Director in the Division of Astronomical Sciences. Take it away, Hans.
Thank you so much, Beth. Really appreciate it. And I thank you all for sticking around for what's almost the last session of this. And I'll let you know that I am presenting this session live to you. So this is not a recording. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Thank you again for attending, and hope that this is useful to those of you who are proposing and have proposed in the Directorate of Mathematical and Physical Sciences. My name is Hans Krim. I'm a Program Director in the Division of Astronomical Sciences, and I've been at the NSF since 2016. My research background is in X-ray astrophysics, mostly gamma ray bursts and galactic X-ray binaries. So first, just a general organization of the talk. I'm going to give you an overview of the MPS Directorate. We'll talk a little bit about NSF's 10 big ideas as applied in MPS. Then I'll talk about some cross-cutting programs, multidisciplinary research and instrumentation programs, broadening participation programs, some undergraduate research programs, and then I'll spend probably the last half of the talk talking about programs in the individual divisions. So this is a chart that perhaps you've seen before. I'm not going to go over this in detail, but just wanted to show you where math and physical sciences shows up within the overall NSF organization. And so you see this is a very flat organization structure. The assistant director for math and physical sciences basically reports directly to the director of the National Science Foundation, Dr. Panchanathan. So this is how the Directorate for Math and Physical Sciences is broken down. We have an annual budget for the Directorate of about $1.5 billion. Our Assistant Director is Sean Jones, and there are 5 divisions listed here, and these correspond roughly to academic departments: astronomy, chemistry, math, and physics. The one that's a little bit odd in terms of academia is the Divisions of Materials Research. And this covers sort of a combination between chemistry and physics and condensed matter physics. And just a little aside, since I am in astronomy, we're going to be getting a new director, Dr. Deborah Fisher from Yale University, will be joining the foundation on Tuesday. The mission of MPS is to harness the collective efforts of the mathematical and physical sciences communities to address the most compelling scientific questions, educate the future advanced workforce, and promote discoveries to meet the needs of the nation. The MPS divisions support both disciplinary and interdisciplinary activities and partner with each other and with other NSF directorates in order to effectively encourage basic research across the scientific disciplines. And if you want to learn more about the MPS and all of the programs within it, I'll direct you to the Directorate for Math and Physical Sciences brochure. The most recent version is dates to 2020. This gives all sorts of statistics about the funding rates and other information, and lots of examples about the things that are funded in the various divisions within this directorate. Just first, a couple of slides which were taken from that brochure and some other sources. This is a slide which was included in the Science and Engineering Statistics Survey from 2018, and showing the NSF support of academic basic research in certain fields as a percentage of total federal support. So mathematics, we see that the bulk of academic support comes from NSF. Physical sciences overall, it's about 40%. The other major funders in our directorate being NASA and the Department of Energy. This is a slide taken from that directorate brochure, and this shows our budget has really been pretty steady over the past 10 years. I mean, in actual dollars and the constant dollars. And that has allowed us to maintain a roughly constant funding rate. I mean, there's certainly bumps and wiggles of what gets awarded, but our funding rate is somewhere around 25% over the past 10 years. We receive on the order of 7,000 total proposals a year, and we make just shy of 2,000 awards. The actual science of MPS comes through its 5 divisions, and together these span an astonishing breadth of fundamental lines of inquiry that collectively make MPS a major component of the entire NSF portfolio. So we're going to talk now about some of the 10 big ideas. And these are research ideas that were developed in 2016 by the National Science Foundation, which are 10 bold long-term research and process ideas that identify areas for future investment at the frontiers of science and engineering. MPS is the steward of the windows on the universe and the quantum leap big ideas, and plays a critical role in several of the other ideas. So first I'll talk about quantum leap, and this is leading what we're calling the next quantum revolution. So a plan to build on the first quantum revolution in the early 20th century, as it's now called, and prepare for the second one, exploiting quantum phenomena like superposition, entanglement, and squeezing to enable the next wave of precision sensors and more efficient computation, simulation, and communication. And NSF supports research that addresses the manipulation of quantum states and the control of material light interactions involving physicists, mathematicians, and engineers. There'll be strong connections to industry, other federal agencies, and international partnerships. And the top picture over on the upper left shows the 1927 Solvay Conference. Participants include Marie Curie, Hendrik Lorentz, and Albert Einstein. And at the bottom right is the experimental confirmation of Majorana modes at the ends of a nanowire in the proximity of a superconducting substrate, possibly a key to future quantum computing. So this Venn diagram here shows the interconnectedness that makes up the quantum leap. So the National Science Foundation is involved, of course, in fundamental quantum science across our divisions, engineering and applied quantum science, and quantum science and society. And where all of these circles interact is in the education of the new quantum workforce. And so the NSF has partnered with the DOE to hold quantum science summer schools. These were held in 2017 through 19. They were postponed due to the pandemic, but hopefully in 2022, this will be resumed. Harnessing the data revolution is basically the big idea that brings together the fields of science and mathematics, statistics, and theoretical community to develop the foundations of data science through integrated research and training activities. So Tripods is a particular program within the Math and Physical Sciences Directorate that brings this together to support first in phase 1, small collaborative institutes on the order of 500,000 per year. And phase 2 supports a smaller number of larger institutes, which come together as consortia of the phase 1 institutes. And you can see the partners in the current 2 phase 2 tripods, the Institute for Foundations of Data Science, and over here, the Foundations of Data Science Institute. And there's a new call for phase 2 proposals. So if you are involved in one of the phase 1 initiatives, your group is welcome to join together to put in a proposal for a phase 2 larger tripods institute. And the final one of the big ideas that I'll focus on is Windows on the Universe, which is multi-messenger astrophysics. And you can see in the little picture here that this puts together 3 what are called messengers. The messengers are gravitational waves, electromagnetic radiation across the whole spectrum from radio to X-rays to gamma rays, and then particles, which are mostly neutrinos and cosmic rays. So the goal of Windows on the Universe is to build the capabilities and accelerate the synergy and interoperability of the three messengers to realize integrated multi-messenger astrophysical explorations of the universe. Windows on the Universe capitalizes on NSF's major investment in facilities like LIGO, IceCube, and NSF's Vera Rubin Observatory. The program taps longstanding NSF investments in core observational, experimental, and theoretical work in groundbreaking astronomy, particle astrophysics, gravitational, nuclear, and plasma physics. And the Windows on the Universe program has provided $60 million in support of research and development in the coordination, interpretation, workforce development, diversity, equity, and inclusion to bring about the capabilities and discoveries in this emerging field. So next, I'm going to talk about some particular multidisciplinary research and instrumentation programs that could be of interest to investigators in MPS. This is a very busy slide, and I'm not going to go through this all in detail, but you should have available, as was said earlier, the slides. So this is just a sampling of some of the programs that could be of interest to MPS proposers. And I'm just going to look at a few of these in the next few minutes. The first of these is career, and you might have heard about this on an earlier slide, but I'll just focus on this again, that this is a grant for junior faculty, teacher, scholars. And the proposals are selected based on the integration of research and education. So these are very important to consider. If you are a junior faculty member, you are eligible to submit to the career program. But keep in mind that this is not an excellence in research prize. It's not a default mechanism for new assistant professors, and it has a specialized purpose, which may not be suitable for all PIs, but really requires the integration of research and education. And like all of these programs, there are all sorts of specific rules, regulations, guidelines. And the place to find out about NSF solicitations, and you're going to see in red and boldface on all of my slides, or many of my slides, this sort of number. So the best way to find, for instance, the career solicitation is to do a Google search for NSF 20. That's the year that this current solicitation was instituted. Not the career program dates back much earlier, but it was updated in 2020, and then just a serial number here. But just looking for those numbers will help you find out what the programs are really all about. Another program of great interest to many people in our directorate is the Computation and Data Enabled Science and Engineering, CDS&A. MPS disciplines are both leading consumers and hard drivers of cyber capability. And MPS research both requires and creates breakthroughs in algorithms, in simulation and modeling methods, and in materials for emerging cyber technology. This is designed to identify and capitalize on opportunities for major scientific and engineering breakthroughs through new computational and data analysis approaches. And CDS&A is what we call internally a meta program. So basically, this means that if your work has the potential to create and lead to the enabling of breakthroughs in computational and data analysis, see the program announcement, the PD 20, et cetera, then you can specify for consideration by CDS&E on your cover sheet. The proposal will be reviewed in the primary program to which it is submitted, but may be co-reviewed and co-funded if it fits CDS&E. The next program I'll talk about is the Major Instrumentation Program, or MRI. And this is an annual program. The current competition deadline is January 19th, 2020. And this provides support to acquire critical research instrumentation, without which advances in fundamental science and engineering research may not otherwise occur. It supports instrument acquisition and instrument development, increased access to multi-user instruments, enhanced research training of students. There's some limitations on the number of submissions per institution, and these awards can be up to $4 million. and does require cost sharing for most institutions. Another program that is brand new this year in MPS is called ADAPT, Advancing Discovery with AI-Powered Tools. And this is another type of program description called a Dear Colleague letter. And basically what this means is that there's no proposal deadline, it's an open call, and submissions in this case are either for supplements or for eager early concept proposals or raise multidisciplinary proposals. And the opportunities are in, but not limited to, 4 focus areas: AI for modeling and simulation, AI for data and model analytics, AI for concept discovery, and AI in physical systems and experimentation. The next set of cross-cutting programs that I'm going to talk about are on broadening participation. So the Math and Physical Sciences every year holds a new investigators workshop. And unfortunately, that workshop is being held concurrently with this one right now. But this is an annual event, and we're hoping that in 2022, we can be back to making this an in-person event, such as was held in 2019. And this is geared for new researchers, assistant professors. This is really geared mostly for the investigators, not the research administrators in this case. And we strongly encourage investigators from underrepresented groups in STEM to apply for this. A couple of other brand new programs in MPS that could be of interest to you or to your students are LEAPS and Ascend. So LEAPS is a sort of a sister program to Career, which involves launching early career academic pathways in the mathematical and physical sciences. The emphasis of LEAPS is on supporting pre-tenure faculty at minority-serving institutions, predominantly undergraduate institutions, and Carnegie Research II universities. And the focus here is on broadening participation. Ascend is a postdoctoral fellowship program that supports postdoctoral fellows who will broaden the participation of groups that are underrepresented in MPS fields in the US. And this has a very nice feature that it is geared for facilitating career development and the possible transition to a faculty position. So we made our first Leaps and Ascends Awards in 2021, and they're brand new solicitations which have just come out. And in fact, they are so new that they haven't actually been posted yet. So if you Google these today, you're not going to get a whole lot of information, but early next week, these should become live and give you what you need to know if you're interested in applying for LEAPS or for Ascend. There's another program within MPS, which is the Graduate Research Supplements. The Alliance for Graduate Education and the Professorate is an NS-wide program, but AGAP GRS is within MPS. This is available to PIs to support qualifying graduate students at AGAP or AGAP Legacy Institutes only, and you can find out whether your institution qualifies at that link. This allows the support of 1 additional PhD student per award. There's emphasis placed on underrepresented groups, and the student can't be currently supported by the federal government. And if your student qualifies and you have an existing award to which can be supplemented, you can get the stipend, tuition, benefits, and indirect costs on the order of $60,000 per year to support your graduate student. And you can see this Dear Colleague letter here, 20-083, for more information. So lastly, among the cross-cutting programs, I'll talk about the undergraduate research programs. So this is, the first one we'll talk about is RUI, facilitating research at primarily undergraduate institutions. RUI proposals from eligible institutions institutions must demonstrate how the research award would impact the research environment of the predominantly undergraduate institution. And you actually get, if you are an eligible institution, or from an eligible institution, you have an additional 5 pages to make this case for how important this work is for the research and education environment at your institution. For RUI, you submit through the solicitation 14579, and you indicate then on the cover sheet which program within NSF should receive your proposal. There's no single foundation-wide deadline for RUI proposals, so you should follow the deadline for the particular division program you're interested in. And the final slide in this part of the talk is on REU sites and projects. So REU stands for Research Experience for Undergraduates, and this is a little bit out of date map, but this is showing the REU sites in the Division of Materials Research that existed a few years ago. So REU sites are independent proposals to initiate and conduct projects that engage a number of students in research. This is a site that may be based in a single discipline or on interdisciplinary research opportunities with a coherent intellectual theme. Proposals with an international dimension are welcome. And so an REU site is where you set up a program, usually during the summer, in which you and as many of your colleagues as are able and interested, work in a very specific way, not only to provide research opportunities, but to provide mentoring, to provide professional guidance, enrichment activities for a group of students who normally come from outside that institution. There's another type of REU proposal, a project or a supplement, which is something that you would, if you have an existing NSF award, you can apply for a supplement to provide 1 or 2 students with an REU-like experience. So a special experience specifically designed to be compatible with the program. And for our REU sites and projects, and for a lot of other things, it's really a great idea to talk to your program directors before you submit such a proposal. So now I'm going to talk for the rest of the time about the programs in the individual divisions within the Math and Physical Sciences Directorate. So first, and these are just in alphabetical order, not because this is my home division, I'll talk about the Division of Astronomical Sciences, or AST. So this is a little snapshot of the programs that are supported in AST. So over on the left are the individual investigator programs, and I happen to be the lead in our division. Mid-scale is in the middle, and the facilities, and I'll talk a little bit more about all of our facilities, is over here on the right with Senior Advisor Ashley Vanderley. And you can see the relative proportion of the AST budget that goes for each of these areas corresponding to the colors in the little pie chart here. So you see that in our division, about 2/3 of our funding goes to support the major facilities, and about 1/4 of the funding goes to support these individual investigator programs. I'm not going to talk about MSIP mid-scale in here because that is normally a program for more senior investigators. But I will talk about several of the specific AST programs that are of interest to investigators at all levels. So the first one within the individual investigator programs is our flagship program, Astronomy and Astrophysics Research Grants. This covers the fields of solar, planetary, and exoplanetary research, stellar astronomy, galactic astronomy, extragalactic astronomy, and cosmology. And you'll see when we start talking about the other divisions that most divisions in MPS have specific programs. You would apply, for instance, to solar or planetary or to stellar. In astronomy, you apply to the AAG, and within the division, we figure out which of these sub-programs is most appropriate for the review of your proposal. So here there's a single solicitation with a single deadline. Anything that is astrophysics will be submitted to this program, and you can start submitting right now. We actually have our first proposal in, and the deadline is November 15th. So these research grants support observational, theoretical, laboratory, and archival studies in all areas of astrophysics, and support programs that enable new research capabilities. And of course, programs may span multiple disciplines or areas of study and utilize multiple techniques. And then down in the lower left corner is the solicitation number. And you've probably heard some of this before, but just reiterate that an AAG award is made to an institution, not to an individual, and which is usually a university, observatory, or center, like the Center for Astrophysics. We generally don't make awards directly to another federal agency. In AAG, our typical awards are 3 years, $450,000 over the 3 years, which includes the institutional indirect costs. In this program, most of the budget is usually for salary, grad student, postdoc, faculty summer salary, and also if you are in a position where you are supported mostly by grants, you can apply for additional coverage for your salary, travel, publication costs, and some equipment. And note that in AAG, proposals that are solely or predominantly for the acquisition, analysis, and interpretation of space-based data from NASA's supported missions will be returned without review. This next slide shows our funding history up to the latest year that we're allowed to show in a public forum. And you can see that the AAG budget has been fairly constant at around $50 million over the past 10 years. But fortunately, we have been able to increase our funding rate. And this is mostly through the inclusion of funds from outside the division. I mean, such as the big ideas, CDS&E, et cetera. And our funding rate in AAG is around 20%. The next program is ATI, Advanced Technologies and Instrumentation. This is a program that focuses on developing new technology and instrumentation for astronomy, the development of innovative, potentially transformative technologies, even at high technical risk. This is the place where if you have ideas for hardware, software, enabling new types of observations that have the potential to be important in the future, but you need the funding to develop the ideas, develop the technology, and test it out. This is the program which you should apply. These average awards tend to be higher because there's equipment costs, often travel costs, costs of engineers. Cost sharing is not allowed. Like AAG, this is an annual solicitation, and the next deadline is November 15th, the same as for AAG. Now I'll just mention some of the AST facilities. So if you're an observational astronomer, this would be of great interest to you. These facilities cover the range of ground-based astronomy. So in the upper left is ALMA, the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array in Chile, radio astronomy. Below that, we have the Green Bank Observatory in West Virginia. And next to that is sadly a before picture of the Arecibo Observatory before the collapse of the receiver that destroyed the dish. But I will say that NSF still supports Arecibo and is working with the community and the stakeholders to determine the most appropriate way to utilize the facility in the future. On the optical side, we have Gemini, which is a pair of twin 8-meter telescopes in Hawaii and in Chile. CTIO at the top there is in Chile, and the sister observatory is Kitt Peak in Arizona. DKIST will very soon be beginning its science operations next month, in fact, as a solar observatory on the summit of Mauna Kea. So this is the Daniel K. Inouye Solar Telescope. And the Vera Rubin Observatory is scheduled to start science operations in mid-2024. You may know this as LSST, and this will undertake a 10-year survey of the southern sky looking for transients of all types. But note that anyone may propose for observing time on AST-funded facilities, and there is no specific linkage between observing time and the grants that you would get through AAG. So even if you don't have an AAG grant, you can still apply for and be granted time on these major facilities. So next we'll move to the Division of Chemistry. And the Division of Chemistry has sort of the opposite funding profile from astronomy. About 83% of the support in chemistry goes to the individual investigator award. So I'll focus mostly on those. There's a single solicitation, NSF 21589, but there are 9 major program areas within the individual investigator awards, 5 core and 4 with interdisciplinary flavor. And I'll talk about each of these very briefly in turn. So the first of the disciplinary research programs is chemical synthesis, which covers inorganic, organometallic, and organic synthesis, experimental and computational research, efficient synthetic methodologies, and the synthesis of complex and or challenging chemical structures. And I won't read them, but you can see the proposal window where these, unfortunately, it has passed for this year, but for several of the others on later slides, you can still apply. Next is the studies of chemical structure, dynamics, and chemical mechanisms. There are 2 different tracks, physical chemistry with the A track and physical inorganic and organic chemistry, the B track. Next is theory, models, and computational methods, which supports the discovery and development of theoretical and computational methods or models to address chemical challenges. Below that is chemically relevant measurement science and imaging, targeting both improved understanding of new and existing methods and instrument development. The next program is experimental and computational research directed toward catalytic processes, inorganic, organic, organometallic catalysts. Then we're going to look at some of the more interdisciplinary programs, the first of which is environmental chemical sciences, which funds experimental and computational research on chemical processes in the environment. This does not fund field studies. Chemistry of life processes funds experimental or computational studies of molecules and or systems at the interface of chemistry and biology. Such studies would promote the fundamental understandings of the molecular underpinnings of life processes. Studies of function, not dysfunction. The next one is next and final one is the synthesis and structure function reactivity of macromolecular, supramolecular, and nanoscopic structures. So the other activities that are supported within chemistry for investigators, the first of these is the Centers for Chemical Innovation. This supports research centers focused on major long-term fundamental chemical research challenges. And this has 2 tracks, phase 1 up to $600,000 per year, and phase 2 up to $4 million per year. We've already talked about major research instrumentation and research experience for undergraduates. And these are some of the current chemical centers for innovation phase 2 centers. I won't talk about all of these, but you can see some of the various things that are being looked at here: molecularly optimized networks, sustainable nanotechnology, electrochemistry, the Center for Aerosol Impacts on Climate and the Environment, sustainable polymers, and so on. There's a wide range of centers covering a wide range of chemistry research. The chemistry division also supports a number of facilities and institutes. ChemMatCars is at the University of Chicago. This is a beamline for optics research, crystallography, liquid surface scattering, X-ray scattering, polymers, etc. Nexus is an ultrafast laser that delivers a kilowatt of power at Ohio State. The NSF High Field Fourier Transform Ion Cyclotron Resonance Mass Spectrometry Facility at Florida State. There is the NSF Molecule Maker Lab Institute, which is a consortium between Illinois, Penn State, and RIT, and the Molecular Sciences Software Institute at Virginia Tech. And some of these you'll see acronyms on here. The acronyms don't really matter in this context, but showing that a lot of these programs are co-funded and interdisciplinary across NSF divisions and directorates. Now, the chemistry division has probably the most active outreach within MPS, and you can see some of the many activities. There are workshops. They host biweekly virtual office hours that you can join to ask your questions. There's a career workshop every year. The next one will be, I hope, in May of 2022. There's information on the chemistry website, newsletters, listserv emails, and also the chemists, make a presence at major international and national conferences. And that all is true of all of us in different, we always visit the major conferences in our fields. The chemistry department also has outreach to attend virtual chemistry department staff meetings. If you're interested in having a program officer talk to your department specifically about opportunities in chemistry. Next, we'll move to the Division of Materials Research. And they provided me with this nice little picture here that shows, not only some of the breadth of materials research, but also reminding you that broader impacts and involving students in outreach is a vital part of DMR, as it is across the National Science Foundation. So DMR activities are sort of outlined in this slide here. The topical materials research programs is the equivalent main program for individual investigator research. And you can read the topical areas: biomaterials, ceramics, electronic and photonic materials, metals and metallic nanostructures, polymers, condensed matter and materials theory, condensed matter physics, and solid state and materials chemistry. And these are all within the solicitation S600, but these are individual programs. There are cross-cutting activities, diversity, international education. There are centers and teams, and I'll talk a little bit about some of these on later slides, but there are materials research and research, science and engineering centers, partnerships in research and education and materials, and programs designing materials to revolutionize and engineer our future. And there are also a number of major facilities that I'll talk about on a later slide. So this is basically how things wrap out. In DMR. About half the budget, or 40% of the budget, is spent on the individual investigator programs. It jumps up to more than 50% when you add in career and REU sites. These are some of the DMR facilities. There's the Center for High Energy X-ray Science at CHESS, the Cornell High Energy Synchrotron Source in Cornell University. There's the Center for High Resolution Neutron Scattering, which is in Maryland at NIST, the National High Magnetic Field Facility in Florida, and there's a nationwide consortium of centers which together make up the National Nanotechnology Coordinated Infrastructure. And this is a particular program that I'll highlight here. And this brings together the theory, experiment, and synthesis of new materials to revolutionize and engineer our future. This is a partnership with the Engineering and Computer Science Directorates. This accelerates materials discovery and development and collaborates and iterates to close the loop between theory and experiment. And this is the program by which the NSF participates in the Major Materials Genome Initiative for Global Competitiveness. And this is basically to build the fundamental knowledge base needed to progress toward designing and making a material with specific and desired function or property from first principles. Just highlight one more of the NSF DMR funded activities. And up in there, you see the UC Santa Barbara Quantum Foundry. And this award has the name DMR 1906, etc. This is a foundry for accelerated discovery and control of materials that support protected quantum states with unprecedented coherence and scalable entanglement. Their three pillars address the materials challenge of controlling coherence of entangled quantum states, create, characterize, and control quantum coherent states, train a diverse quantum workforce to drive and harness materials advances in emerging quantum technologies, and catalyze partnerships with industry in both QIS research and workforce training. And QIS is Quantum Information Science. We'll move next to the Division of Mathematical Sciences, DMS. DMS supports research covering the entire spectrum of mathematical sciences. So like chemistry, the bulk of the funding goes to individual investigator and research group awards. They're both disciplinary programs, unsolicited, and special research programs, solicited. Math DMS also supports mathematical sciences institutes and training of the workforce at next generation, postdoctoral fellowships, research training grants, and research experience for undergraduates. The DMS main investment areas are in workforce training, infrastructure, institutes and centers, and new initiatives and special programs. There are 8 program areas which are listed here: algebra and number theory, analysis, applied mathematics, computational mathematics, probability, combinatorics and foundations, statistics, topology and geometric analysis, and mathematical biology. And DMS also has major investments in a lot of interdisciplinary activities, some of which I talked about, some of which I'll just read off here. There's a joint initiative with NIH in math biology. There are algorithms for threat detection, partnerships with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. There's a investment area in secure and trustworthy cyberspace, CDS&E. They participate in the designing materials. There's a partnership with the U.S. Department of Energy in algorithms for modern power systems. They participate in tripods, which we saw earlier in the talk. There's an NSF Simons collaboration on a National Institute for Theory and Mathematics and Biology. Smart health and biomedical research in the area of artificial intelligence and advanced data science, and stimulating collaborative advances, leveraging experience in the mathematical and scientific foundations of deep learning, and finally, the NSF Simons Research Collaboration on scientific foundations of deep learning. So you can see that DMS not only supports a huge number of individual investigators, but also puts together centers for studying how mathematics interfaces with biology, computer science, data science, national security, and on and on. The final division that I'll talk about is the Division of Physics. And this is a nice indication of what is supported in physics, the broad, rich, and diverse research portfolio. This portfolio supports the HOT, active galactic nuclei produce high-energy cosmic rays, as observed by the Pierre Auger Observatory. Cold, ultra-cold molecules studied at the Joint Institute for Laser, I've forgotten what JELA stands for. Large, nucleosynthesis and accreting white dwarfs. Small, in spirals produce space-time distortion less than a diameter over proton at LIGO, which is the Laser Interferometric Gravitational Wave Observatory. Non-living, proton-proton collisions at the CERN Particle Accelerator in Switzerland. Living, brainwave images with diffusion MRI. New, the quantum network at Caltech. To old, studying studying the theory of Big Bang soup recreated in quark-gluon plasma at the Rochester High Energy Collider. The physics portfolio is shown here, and again, note that condensed matter physics is within DMR and not physics. Physics is approximately 50-50 between individual investigator awards and research infrastructure. I'll talk about the facilities briefly on the next slide, but you see that there are experiment and theory tracks that cover this basically everything in physics besides condensed matter: atomic, molecular, and optical, elementary particle physics, particle astrophysics and cosmology, gravitational physics, nuclear physics, the physics of living systems, plasma physics, and research support of the LIGO Observatory. There are also a number of cross-cutting initiatives, the Physics Frontier Centers, Integrative Activities in Physics, and a program in Quantum Information Science. The physics major facilities are shown here in pictures. First is the National Superconducting Cyclotron Library. The Large Hadron Collider is over to the right, which is located in California. LIGO stands for the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Laboratory, and there are two LIGO facilities that work together, one in Hanford, Washington, and one in Livingston, Louisiana. And IceCube is located at the South Pole, and this is the observatory for neutrinos from outer space. So the individual investigator-initiated research programs, which was on the slide before last, is submitted to solicitation 21.593. Note that there are different deadlines for different physics programs, and for all solicitations, the NSF requires the submission by 5 p.m. in your local time. So we don't give advantage to people who live on the West Coast of Hawaii. It's 5 o'clock where you're submitting from. And so you can see the deadlines for the different programs on this slide, but all of the programs in physics, as in astronomy, are still to come. So that brings me to the end of this presentation, and I urge you to ask questions. I mean, it's really important, I mean, especially as you're beginning your research investigation career, talk to program officers. I mean, we are very friendly. We are very here to help you. A big part of our job is assisting individual investigators. So before the solicitation deadline, it's a really good idea to talk to the NSF people who are in charge of that solicitation. And if you send a email to the Deputy Division Director of the particular division, if you can't find out who is the appropriate program officer, they'll be happy to direct you to the right person. But I'll just urge you that it's really important to reach out to us before you submit your solicitation. You can't really talk to us while it's under review. And then after the review, if, I mean, you're one of the people who are not given an award, you can talk to the program officers to help interpret and understand the process and the reviews that you got. So I will stop my screen share and be ready to take questions.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Krim. And we have a bunch of excellent questions that have come in while you were speaking. So let's just get right to it. So there was a question, yes, about has to do with the computational and data-enabled science and engineering solicitation. Okay. And whether so the physics division hasn't been involved in the past with that solicitation, and so they're wondering if maybe physics, will be involved in the future.
I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that. I don't really know what they've been discussing on that front. I mean, I know that most of the other divisions are included in that. I would probably reach out, to the physics division and ask about that. But it certainly makes sense to me that physics should participate. In fact, I'm a little surprised to hear that they don't.
Okay, all right, good. That's good advice. They can contact the physics division on that. Okay, so the next one has to do with for the LEAPS solicitation. Do faculty need to be exclusively in a tenure track position, or can they be lecturers or non-tenure track assistant professors?
The program, as I understand it, and I would urge you to read the solicitation because there may be some changes from the past. I haven't seen the the brand new solicitation. But yes, I mean, generally, to be eligible for LEAPs, just like career, one must be in a tenure track position, but not yet achieve tenure. Because the goal of this program, I mean, is to help develop the career of faculty members, and it's really important that they have the opportunity within the department to both be a researcher and a teacher. So the education part is very important. But I mean, unless something has changed in the brand new solicitation, that's the requirement.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you for that. So a couple of people were wondering, you had a email address that for the chemistry program officer, if they wanted a chemistry program officer to come out and speak at a department meeting. Can you just repeat the email address?
Okay, well, I think that people can get. I think the slides are going to be available, but let me see if I can quickly find that, and maybe I can pop it into chat.
Into the chat. Okay, right.
Easiest thing to do here, so let me do that.
Okay, great. Yes, it's always a lot of wonderful information that's provided in these sessions, and if you look away at the wrong moment, and you miss it. So great.
Yeah,
okay,
and especially the URLs. I mean, I don't expect people to note those down, but hopefully, I mean, if the slide, I mean, I did make the slides available to the organizers, so hopefully they'll be available to participants.
Yes, definitely, and they will be posted. The slides will be posted on the NSF Outreach Resources page as well. But thank you for putting that email address in the chat
and
there.
I guess I can also put it. I'll also just type in my. Okay, and I just put in my email address, and if you want anything specific from the slides that you weren't able to copy down or have questions, I'll be happy to talk to you offline too.
Perfect. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. All right, let's see. The next one has to do with the, the Graduate Research Fellowship Program, and specifically last year's priority in artificial intelligence and computational areas, and whether that last year priority was still in play. So is the AI and computational areas, are they still emphasized as a top priority, or are they equivalent to other NSF priorities?
So you're asking about so this person was asking about the Graduate Research Fellowship program?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I did not have a slide. I did not have a slide about that. And unfortunately, that's another question that I don't have the answer to. I mean, astronomy participates in the program, but I'm not aware of the specific emphasis that they're covering this year. So I would urge people to visit the GRFP website and talk to, because this is a program that is run outside of MPS. I mean, we participate in the panels, but the organization and the administration of these awards is outside the directorate. So I have a little bit less knowledge of what the rules, what the priorities, things like that are. I apologize.
Okay, no, not a problem. Not a problem. NSF is a very, even though we're a small federal agency, in kind of the whole federal government landscape. There's it is a lot of there are a lot of moving parts at NSF. So yes, so you can't be expected to to know about all of them, but yes, definitely they can reach out to one of the GRFP program officers to get that information. So okay, great. All right. So Another question somebody had was, when is the next DMREF competition? They thought that it may not be happening until 2023, but they're just curious as to when that next DMREF solicitation competition
Okay.
might happen.
I'm gonna have to punt on that one too, because that's I'm not in that division. I mean, I know that there was a competition this year, and I don't know if the solicitation specifies when the next competition would be. But yeah, again, this case, I would urge. I mean, if they go to the solicitation, I mean, that is closed for this year, but there still is the information on there who is the cognizant program scientist for that program director for that program. That person would be able to either answer the question, or as in some cases the answer is we don't know, because we don't know what the funding situation is. But I'm sure that they have an idea of when they next want to hold that competition.
Got it. Okay. All right. Wonderful. Okay. A question came in about evaluating the broader impacts and outreach, and how reviewers are charged with evaluating broader impacts. And yeah, wonder if you could just kind of speak to that a little bit. So, sometimes the person is saying it seems like maybe there's more attention is given to the scientific plans.
Okay. All right. Well, good. This is one that I can attempt to answer, because broader impacts are in all programs at NSF. Yeah, I mean, you're certainly not alone. I mean, the person who asked this, I mean, in having trouble understanding, I mean, about how broader impacts are evaluated. But what I can say is, I mean, what we tell our reviewers, and I think this is pretty true across the foundation, is that I mean, the review is supposed to be a synthetic evaluation of the overall impact of the proposal. And so we don't say that there's quotas, that there's so much percent broader impact, so much percent intellectual merit. We don't say that broader impact is sort of a tiebreaker. I mean, we want to see overall how well this proposed work will impact the scientific discipline, as well as broader impact on society. And so it's not necessary that the broader impacts be directly tied to the research. I mean, in some fields, that's much easier than others. I mean, if you're developing new materials that could be, for instance, artificial skin or something like that, that itself could be a broader impact. If you're doing theoretical string theory, it's very hard to tie research directly to the broader impact. And so we appreciate and encourage broader impacts of all sorts. And another thing, I mean, sometimes reviewers are ask us, what should we look for in broader impacts? And we can't really tell them, because we want it to really be open. What they will evaluate is what is the potential impact. So whatever they're looking at, whether it is student mentoring, whether it's workshops, whether it's outreach, I mean, will this have an impact? And it's not necessarily the impact, I mean, on numbers. I mean, if you give one lecture, I mean, you might reach, 500 people on YouTube. But if you work directly with 2 or 3 high school students, I mean, that could be just as big an impact, I mean, on those individuals. So it's not numbers. But we also ask the reviewers to look at how realistic the program is, what sort of capabilities the researchers have to carry that out. I mean, sometimes somebody will put in something and it's pretty, I mean, clear something was kind of added on at the second. I'm going to go give talks to prisoners about my research, and is there any way that they've even considered, I mean, what that involves and how you go about it. So I mean, if you really, it really helps to have something that indicates that you have thought seriously about this. You might have done it before on a pilot basis. So those are the things that we ask people to look at. I mean, the same review criteria that we look at for broader impacts, the impact, the capabilities, the resources are asked. We ask people to look at for broader impacts. So it's a package. It's a whole thing, and sometimes proposals are awarded with a very strong intellectual merit and not as strong broader impact, and vice versa. So just do the best you can, but do something that's realistic. Propose something that's realistic and that you're capable of achieving.
Right. Okay. All right. Wonderful. So there was a question about any updates for a new PIRE competition next year. And I do see on the website that the PIRE program is currently paused for revision of the solicitation, and that they anticipate release of a new solicitation in FY22. So I would just encourage the person to look at the keep a
I don't
eye out on the website.
I have any additional information on that.
Okay, all right. So I would just encourage that person to keep an eye out on the NSF website, and they will probably make an announcement also through the normal channels when that solicitation is issued. So. All righty. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about what you see as makes a good and successful proposal. What are some tips that you can give people?
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. Another nice open-ended question, but no, I'm happy to talk about that. Okay. I mean, a couple of things to remember. I mean, first of all, I mean, a proposal solicitation is a competition. I mean, this is, and so you're going to get evaluation grades essentially. I mean, from the reviewers, but when it comes to actually being funded, your proposal is in competition with all the other proposals that are within that program, within that solicitation. And so you need to make something that is compelling. I mean, in some sense, I mean, you are selling your ideas and your implementation of them. And I'll just as an aside, I mean, one of the best ways really to learn about the process and about good proposals is to come and serve as a reviewer on an NSF review panel. And I mean, as long as you have a PhD in your field, I mean, you are eligible to be a reviewer. I guess in engineering and some other fields, I mean, whatever the terminal degree is in that field, but in most of MPS, it's a PhD. But most programs except postdocs, and certainly, I mean, junior faculty, you don't have to have had an NSF award in most cases to serve. So what you'll find, I mean, is that reviewers are busy. I mean, they are asked to review in detail, 4, 6, 8 proposals, sometimes more. They're asked to read dozens of proposals. And this is all. I mean, there is a small reimbursement for their time, but it's essentially a volunteer effort. And so you want to have a proposal that stands out in some way, that really, I mean, catches the attention. And I don't mean that it necessarily has to have flashy graphics and things like that. I mean, you don't need to have somebody draw up these fancy pictures like you see behind Beth and me, but it should read well. And remember, the other thing is that while program officers spend a lot of time finding the best reviewers for a panel, for a proposal, quite often, a panel has a fairly broad range of topics on it. No, we're not going to have, a math proposal next to a chemistry proposal next to a high energy physics proposal, but within, say astrophysics, we may be looking at proposals that go everything from supernovas to gamma ray bursts to fast radio bursts. And so we choose people who are, certainly, professional scientists and professional scientists working in the broad field, but they're not necessarily going to be experts in your particular subfield. And so remember that, and write something that both explains the basic ideas. Explain to the reviewers, why this is important work. Put in some context. Don't be afraid of having a page of background. Don't feel like you're going to be insulting the reviewers by putting that in. If somebody really does know that background, like they, know their house, they'll just skip over that page. But for most of the reviewers, they would be very interested in having that. So why is this work important? What will you do to carry this out? Another thing that's really important is to make sure that you explain to the reviewer what you're going to do. You have this idea. What do you propose to do, and what computer simulations are you going to write? What calculations are you going to do? What observations are you going to make? You do want to talk about your past work, and in fact, you're required to if you have recent other NSF awards. But you should spend most of the time talking about what you're going to do, and then also, you should toot your horn a little bit and make it clear that you are the right person to be entrusted with hundreds of thousands of dollars of government money to support your work. That if you have, referenced your papers, talk about that you've, made these contributions. Make sure that it's true. Don't make claims, like my facetious claim to the organizers about having a Nobel Prize at the beginning would easily be seen through. But or maybe not, not to that. But maybe, don't tell people that you invented this field, because that sort of thing could offend a reviewer if they are also in the field. But
that's something that's easy to fact check.
Yeah, but realistically, not praise, but demonstrate your the work that you've done before, and make sure that it reads well, and that and write it. A really good idea is to write it early enough so that you can give it to a colleague who is not a close collaborator, but somebody who would understand it, but is not directly working with you, and have them give you an honest assessment. About, does it make sense to them? Do they understand it? Are the main points, main points handled? And that can go a long way to, and I would recommend this, whether this is your first proposal, your 20th proposal. And again, make sure that, you don't have typos and, bad figures and things like that. Should be clear. So there's a lot there, but there's a lot of things that can help make a good proposal. But also just remember, it's a competition. And like I'll sometimes tell people, the fourth fastest runner in the world doesn't get an Olympic medal, but there's, you're fourth fastest in the world, but only 3 get medals. And so in a solicitation, there may only be 3 awards, and you may have a fantastic award that's 4th place, and it's still a competition. So.
Excellent. All right. Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Those were some wonderful tips that you gave everybody. So appreciate that.
Great.
So there are just a couple more, we're coming toward the end, but I just two more that I wanted to ask you about. I think maybe this one should be posed to the disciplinary program officer, but it has to do with the United States India Science and Technology Endowment Fund. Does that ring a bell at all? No. Okay.
That's not something that astronomy participates in. So we have some other international partnerships, but not that one.
Okay. All right. So that person should just reach out to one of the cognizant program officers in that area and pose their question.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. And then I'll just do one more. And this person was saying that they've heard that some NSF directorates and divisions use rolling submissions. In other words, no specific deadlines for proposal submission. And they were wondering if MPS does that as well.
Not my knowledge. As far as I know, all of these solicitations, have a particular deadline. I know, for instance, in geosciences, they've moved more to the rolling deadlines. It's sort of a matter of culture within the division and what we find works best. We did do a pilot study in astronomy, and we did not really find that improved the process or the quality of proposals. So we've gone back to the deadlines, but there may be some in there, but the ones that I'm familiar with, and I think all the ones I talked about, do have a specific deadline.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Well, this has just been a fantastic program, and you really have covered so much information, Hans, given people a lot of wonderful feedback that they can take back to their institutions. So I want to again thank you so much, Hans, and everybody for joining us today. And thank you for participating in the Fall 2021 Grants Conference. Take care and be well, everybody.